Captain Elias Ward had seen many strange worlds during his years of service with the Terran Exploration Fleet, but nothing compared to the shining halls of the Elvari Palace. The grand chamber stretched high above him, with walls made of crystal that glowed softly with a blue light. Countless banners hung from the ceiling, each marked with golden patterns that told stories of battles, victories, and the long rule of their royal bloodline. He stood among dozens of alien dignitaries, all taller than him, their slender frames and luminous eyes watching him with both curiosity and suspicion. The Elvari were a proud people, graceful yet strong, and this was the first time a human had ever been invited into their inner court. For Elias, it was a mission unlike any other. He was not here to fight or explore. He was here as a guest, a sign of peace between two species that had once viewed each other with distrust. At the center of the hall, upon a raised platform of silver stone, sat Queen Serenia. She was unlike anyone Elias had ever seen. Her presence was commanding yet calm, her long hair shining like strands of silver under the chamber lights. Her eyes glowed softly, like twin stars, and her voice when she spoke carried both warmth and authority. "Captain Elias Ward of Earth," she said, her voice ringing across the hall. "Today your people and mine take a step toward understanding. May this gathering mark the beginning of trust." Elias bowed respectfully, his polished armor gleaming under the light. "It is an honor, Your Majesty. Humanity extends its hand in friendship." The chamber echoed with murmurs. Some Elvari seemed pleased, but others narrowed their eyes. Peace was not easy to accept, especially when fear and pride ran deep. Elias could sense the tension, but he kept his posture straight, his expression calm. The ceremony continued. Musicians played haunting melodies with instruments made of crystal, and dancers moved like flowing water. Yet beneath the beauty of the celebration, Elias could not shake a strange feeling. His instincts, sharpened from years of military training, told him something was wrong. The hairs on the back of his neck prickled, and his hand itched to rest on the hilt of his sidearm. As Queen Serenia rose to address her people, the crowd fell silent. She lifted a hand, her expression serene. "In this hall," she began, "we welcome a new future. No longer will our people stand apart. No longer will we let fear blind us. Today, a human walks among us not as foe but as friend." The audience gave a mixed reaction. Some clapped softly, others only whispered. Elias could feel eyes drilling into him from all sides. And then it happened. From the shadows of the upper balcony, a figure moved. The glint of metal caught Elias's eye, a weapon. In one swift motion, an arrow was loosed, its tip glowing with a strange green liquid. It shot across the hall, aimed directly at the queen's heart. Elias didn't think. His body moved before his mind did. With a sharp shout, he lunged forward, his armored arm raising to shield her. The arrow struck his forearm plate with a piercing clang, the force pushing him back a step. The green poison hissed as it spread across the metal, eating into the surface. Gasps filled the chamber. The queen froze, her eyes wide in shock. Guards rushed forward, but the assassin was already gone, slipping into the shadows before they could react. Elias's heart pounded as he looked down at his armor. The poison had burned a hole through the outer layer, leaving a blackened mark. If that arrow had pierced flesh, it would have killed instantly. "Your Majesty," he said, lowering his arm, "are you hurt?" Queen Serenia shook her head slowly, her gaze locked on him. "No, thanks to you." The hall erupted into chaos. Nobles shouted, guards argued, and accusations flew in every direction. Some demanded the human be questioned, others cried for calm. Yet through the noise, the queen's voice rose clear and strong. "Silence," she commanded. The chamber fell still. She turned her gaze to Elias, studying him with an intensity that made him feel as though she was peering into his very soul. "You risked your life without hesitation," she said softly. "Why?" Elias took a breath, his voice steady. "Because it was the right thing to do. I could not stand by and watch an innocent life be taken, especially yours." Her expression softened, a flicker of emotion crossing her regal features. For a brief moment, the queen of the Elvari looked not like a distant ruler, but like a woman touched by unexpected kindness. The council chamber buzzed with uneasy whispers. No outsider had ever defended the queen before. To risk one's life for another was a concept the Elvari understood, but to see it from a human, an outsider, was something entirely different. The guards examined the remains of the arrow, their faces grim. "It is coated with nicerin poison," one of them reported. "Even a drop would kill within moments. Whoever did this has access to forbidden substances." "Find them," Serenia ordered sharply, "and bring them to me alive." The guards bowed and hurried away, but Elias could tell the search would not be easy. Whoever the assassin was, they had planned carefully. As the crowd dispersed under heavy guard, Queen Serenia approached Elias. Her silver eyes never left his face. "You saved me," she said quietly, her voice low enough that only he could hear. "In our history, no outsider has ever done such a thing." Elias nodded respectfully. "I only did what anyone should do." "Not anyone," she replied, her tone firm. "Many would have stood frozen. Many would have thought only of themselves. You acted without thought of gain or reward. That is rare, even among my own people." He could feel the weight of her words. Something had changed in that moment, not just between them, but in the eyes of those who had witnessed it. Later, as Elias was escorted to his guest chambers in the palace, he replayed the event in his mind. The arrow, the poison, the assassin's skill, it was all too precise. This was not a random act of violence. Someone wanted Serenia dead, and they had planned for the moment when her guard was lowered. Yet one question haunted him most. Why did he act so quickly? Yes, he was trained to protect, to respond to danger, but this felt different. He hadn't just reacted as a soldier. He had reacted as though her life mattered more than his own. That night, Elias stood by the balcony of his chamber, looking out at the alien city below. Towers of crystal rose high into the air, glowing softly under the twin moons. He could hear the distant hum of Elvari ships moving through the sky. The door behind him opened. He turned, surprised to see Queen Serenia herself standing there, flanked by two guards. She dismissed them with a wave of her hand before stepping inside. "I should thank you again," she said, her voice calm yet carrying an undertone of something deeper. "If not for you, my people would be mourning their queen tonight." Elias bowed slightly. "I'm glad I was there." She studied him for a long moment, as though trying to read something hidden. Then she said softly, "The poison used was not common. It was meant to end me quickly before I could call for aid. This was not the act of a lone criminal. It was the work of those who walk within my own walls." "You think it's someone close to you," Elias said. Her eyes darkened. "Yes, and that means I cannot trust many around me. But you had no reason to protect me. You are not bound by our politics. You are free of our chains. That makes your actions pure." For the first time since he had arrived, Elias saw the queen not just as a ruler, but as someone burdened with loneliness, surrounded by power yet uncertain of who to trust. "I will stay," Elias said firmly, "until we find who did this." A faint smile touched her lips, the first he had ever seen. "Then perhaps fate brought you here for more than diplomacy, Captain Elias Ward." Outside, the twin moons shone brightly over the alien city, casting their silver light on the palace. And in that light a bond was born, between a human soldier and an alien queen, one forged not by treaties or commands, but by the simple act of courage. It was a beginning neither of them had expected. The morning after the assassination attempt, Captain Elias Ward woke to the sound of distant horns echoing across the Elvari city. He opened his eyes slowly, feeling the strange softness of the alien bed beneath him. The chamber was elegant, walls of shimmering crystal, curtains that shifted color with the light, and a faint fragrance of flowers he could not name. For a moment, Elias forgot where he was. Then the memory of last night returned, the poisoned arrow, the queen, the chaos. He sat up quickly, his instincts alert. The door slid open with a soft hum, and a tall Elvari guard stepped inside. "The queen requests your presence," the guard said, his tone polite but distant. Elias nodded and followed. The halls of the palace were alive with whispers. Servants, nobles, and guards all turned to look at him as he passed. Some bowed their heads in respect, others glared with open distrust. It was clear that news of his action had spread. When he entered the throne chamber, Queen Serenia was already waiting. She wore a gown of silver fabric that shimmered like liquid light, and her long hair fell over her shoulders like a cascade of stars. Yet what struck Elias most was not her beauty, but her calm composure. Despite the danger she faced, she stood tall, her gaze steady. "Captain Elias Ward," she greeted warmly. "You are well, I trust?" "Well enough, Your Majesty," Elias replied, "though I am concerned for your safety. The assassin is still free." Her silver eyes studied him for a moment. You speak as though my safety is your responsibility. Elias met her gaze without flinching. It is, at least as long as I remain here. A faint smile touched her lips. Then perhaps it is fate that you are here at this time. She gestured toward the side of the chamber, where a long table was set with food, strange fruits, crystal-like bread, and bowls of steaming liquid that gave off a sweet aroma. Join me. We must speak, not as ruler and guest, but as two people who share a bond. Elias hesitated for only a moment before sitting opposite her. The guards remained at a respectful distance, but he could feel their watchful eyes. As they ate, Serenia began to speak. Among my people, loyalty is measured by duty to the crown. But what you showed was different. You had no duty, no obligation, yet you risked yourself. Why? Elias set down the strange fruit he was holding. Where I come from, life is precious. We don't measure who deserves saving by duty or by bloodline. I couldn't stand by and watch you fall. My instincts told me to act. She tilted her head thoughtfully. Instinct. A curious word. Among the Elvari, we are trained to weigh every choice. To act without thought is often seen as weakness. But perhaps it is not weakness, it is purity. There was silence between them for a moment, broken only by the faint hum of energy crystals powering the chamber. Elias studied her carefully. Beneath her calm voice, he could hear the weight she carried. Your Majesty, he said softly. Do you know who might be behind the attack? Her gaze darkened. I have suspicions. The poison used was rare, forbidden. Only certain circles have access to it. That means the plot came from within, perhaps even from those I once trusted. Elias frowned. Then you are surrounded by danger. Yes, she admitted. Which is why I asked you here. I cannot openly declare you my protector. Many already whisper that you are dangerous. But your presence unsettles my enemies, and I trust you. The word surprised him. He had not expected the queen of an alien empire to place trust in a human stranger. Yet he could see in her eyes that she meant it. I'll stay, Elias said firmly. I'll help however I can. Her expression softened, and for a brief moment she looked not like a ruler, but like someone relieved to no longer be alone. The days that followed were tense. Security in the palace was doubled. Guards patrolled every hall, and every guest was watched carefully. Elias accompanied Serenia often, sometimes as part of formal events, sometimes in quieter moments. He learned more about the Elvari people, their history, their pride, and their deep divisions. Some wanted peace with other species, believing trade and knowledge would strengthen them. Others saw outsiders as threats, unworthy of respect. One evening, as the twin moons rose high over the city, Serenia invited Elias to walk with her in the palace gardens. The air was cool, filled with the scent of glowing flowers that lit the paths like lanterns. Do your people have gardens like this? She asked as they strolled side by side. Not like this, Elias admitted, looking at the floating petals that shimmered in the air. On Earth, our gardens are smaller. We grow plants for beauty, for food, for peace of mind. But nothing glows. Nothing floats, Serenia smiled. Perhaps your world is simpler. There is beauty in simplicity. They walked in silence for a while until Serenia spoke again, her tone quieter. When I was a child, I was told never to trust anyone outside my bloodline. Trust invites betrayal, my elders said. Yet I wonder, if we live by fear, do we ever truly live? Elias looked at her carefully. Fear keeps us alive. But trust gives us something worth living for. Her eyes met his, silver and deep. For a moment they stood in the glowing light of the garden, neither speaking, both aware of a connection growing stronger with every passing day. But peace never lasted long. On the third night after the attempt, Elias awoke suddenly in his chamber. A noise, faint but sharp, echoed from the hallway. He reached for his sidearm and moved quietly to the door. The moment he stepped into the hall, a blade flashed toward him. He ducked just in time, the weapon slicing through the air where his head had been. An assassin in dark robes lunged at him, moving with incredible speed. Elias blocked the strike with his armored forearm, then countered with a punch that sent the attacker staggering back. The assassin hissed, revealing glowing eyes filled with hate. Human, the figure spat in the Elvari tongue. You should not be here. She will fall and you will fall with her. Before Elias could respond, the assassin retreated into the shadows. Guards arrived seconds later, but the intruder was gone. When Serenia heard of the attack, she came to him immediately. Concern flashed across her face as she saw the cut on his arm where the blade had grazed him. "You were targeted," she said, her voice sharp with anger. "They no longer strike at me alone. They see you as part of the struggle." Elias shrugged lightly, though inside he felt the weight of the danger. "Then they know I'm not leaving your side." Her expression softened and she placed a hand lightly on his armored arm. "I do not wish for you to risk your life again, but I find I am grateful that you do." As days turned into a week, Elias and Serenia's bond deepened. They spoke often, sometimes of politics, sometimes of philosophy, and sometimes of simpler things. Elias told her about Earth's oceans, its mountains, its storms. Serenia told him about the ancient legends of the Aelvari, stories of stars being born and heroes rising from humble beginnings. The more they shared, the more they understood each other. What began as gratitude slowly grew into something neither of them could name, but whispers in the palace grew louder. Some nobles claimed the queen was under human influence. Others warned that Elias's presence would bring ruin. And somewhere in the shadows, those who wanted Serenia dead were preparing to strike again. Elias knew that danger was far from over. Yet as he looked at Serenia, her strength, her wisdom, and her quiet vulnerability, he felt a resolve stronger than ever. Whatever came next, he would face it. Not because it was his duty, but because he chose to. And for the first time in her reign, Queen Serenia felt she was not standing alone. The palace looked peaceful from the outside, its tall crystal towers glowing softly under the twin moons. But inside, tension coiled like a living thing. Guards doubled their patrols, nobles whispered in corners, and rumors spread faster than truth. The assassination attempt had shaken the Aelvari people. But what disturbed them even more was that a human had been the one to protect their queen. Captain Elias Ward could feel the weight of suspicion each time he walked through the grand halls. Some bowed to him, grateful for his courage. Others stared at him with cold eyes, convinced he was a dangerous influence. He was no stranger to suspicion. He had served as a soldier in many foreign lands on Earth, but here in an alien palace, the mistrust felt sharper. Still, Elias stayed close to Queen Serenia. Every day he joined her during councils, ceremonies, and walks in the gardens. He noticed the way she carried herself, calm, regal, never showing fear, though he knew she lived under constant threat. He respected her deeply, not just as a ruler, but as someone who bore her burdens with quiet strength. One morning, Serenia summoned Elias to her private study. The chamber was smaller than the throne hall, lined with shelves of glowing crystal tablets that stored ancient knowledge. A faint light spilled in through tall windows, painting the room in shades of blue. Serenia stood near the window, her silver hair catching the light. She turned as Elias entered, her eyes sharp with thought. "I trust you slept well?" she asked. "As well as one can in a palace full of whispers," Elias replied with a small smile. Her lips curved faintly, but her tone remained serious. "I've asked you here because I cannot ignore what is happening. My advisors insist the assassin came from outside our walls, but I know better. The poison, the timing, the escape, these were not the actions of outsiders. This was the work of someone with power inside my court." Elias nodded. "That was my thought as well. Whoever it was, they knew the layout. They had access to forbidden poison, and they had confidence they wouldn't be caught." Serenia's expression darkened. The Aelvari pride themselves on loyalty, yet loyalty can be broken by ambition. "I fear there are those who see me as too open to outsiders. My willingness to speak with you has made me a target of distrust." Elias studied her carefully. "You think they tried to kill you because of me?" "Perhaps not directly, but your presence is a spark. It shows my people that alliances are possible. To some that is dangerous." Silence hung between them for a moment. Then Elias said, "Then we find the truth. Whoever planned this left a trail. They always do." Serenia tilted her head slightly as if testing his resolve. "You speak like a hunter." "Soldier," Elias corrected. "I've learned to read patterns to see what doesn't fit, and right now too much doesn't fit." For the first time that morning, a spark of hope lit her eyes. "Then let us hunt together." Over the next days, Elias and Serenia quietly searched for answers. They could not trust everyone, so they relied on themselves and a few loyal guards. Elias noticed details others ignored. He studied the path of the assassin's escape, noting broken fragments of crystal railing where the intruder had landed. He examined the remains of the poisoned arrow, its metal shaft marked with tiny engravings he did not recognize. When he showed them to Serenia, she frowned. "These marks, they belong to the House of Venar, one of the oldest noble families. They claim loyalty to the crown, but they have often resisted my reforms." "Could be a clue," Elias said, "or a trick to make us look the wrong way." Serenia nodded. "Either way, we must proceed with care. Accusing a noble house without proof would tear the court apart." Their search continued in secret. Elias often walked the palace halls at night, listening, watching. He caught fragments of whispered conversations, glances exchanged too quickly, guards who avoided his eyes. The palace was full of shadows and trust was rare. The second attempt came 3 nights later. Elias was escorting Serenia back from an evening council when the air suddenly filled with sharp whistles. Tiny metal darts shot from hidden gaps in the walls. Elias reacted instantly, grabbing the queen and pulling her down behind a pillar. The darts clattered harmlessly against his armor, but he felt the sting of one nicking his shoulder. Guards rushed in, searching for the source, but whoever had set the trap was gone. The mechanism had been hidden within the palace walls themselves. Serenia's face was pale as she helped Elias to his feet. "Are you hurt?" "Just a scratch," he said. Though his shoulder burned from the poison-tipped dart, his armor had slowed most of the dose, but some had seeped through. Serenia called for healers who quickly treated him with glowing herbs that cleansed the poison. But as Elias lay recovering, he saw the look in Serenia's eyes, fear not for herself but for him. "You should not stand so close to me," she whispered when they were alone. "The danger grows with every step we take together." Elias shook his head firmly. "I told you before, I won't leave your side. If they want you, they'll have to get through me first." Her gaze softened, silver eyes shimmering in the dim light. "You are a strange man, Elias Ward. Among my people, loyalty is often tied to blood or crown, but you stand for something else. Maybe that's why you needed someone like me," Elias replied quietly. For a moment, silence lingered, filled with unspoken words neither dared to voice. The failed attack stirred even greater unrest in the palace. Nobles demanded answers. Some accused the queen of hiding the truth. Others whispered that the human's presence had cursed them. During a council meeting, one noble stood and pointed at Elias. "This outsider brings chaos. Since his arrival, our queen has faced death twice. He must be removed." Murmurs of agreement filled the hall. Serenia's eyes flashed with anger as she rose. "Enough," she said, her voice commanding. "This man saved my life not once but twice. Without him, I would not stand before you now. Do not dare call him the cause of danger when he is the reason you still have a queen." The hall fell silent at her words, though many eyes still glared at Elias with suspicion. He stood tall, unshaken. He had faced worse stares in his life. But deep inside, he felt a swell of respect for Serenia. She had defended him publicly, risking her own position. Later that night, Elias and Serenia walked once more in the glowing gardens. The air was cool and the twin moons bathed the flowers in silver light. "You risked much for me today," Elias said quietly. "I only spoke the truth," Serenia replied. "But truth can be dangerous in a court of shadows." Elias glanced at her. "You're not afraid of them, are you?" She smiled faintly. "I have lived my whole life in the storm of politics. Fear is a companion I know well, but what I fear most is isolation. A crown is heavy when there is no one to share its weight." He understood then. Her strength was real, but it was lonely strength. Surrounded by courtiers and guards, yet unsure who to trust. For all her power, she carried her burdens alone. "You're not alone anymore," Elias said firmly. Her eyes met his, and for a long moment, neither spoke. The silence was not empty. It was full, charged with unspoken understanding. But peace never lasted. The next morning, a sealed message was delivered to Serenia. Written in sharp strokes of ink, it carried only a few words. "Step down or you will fall. The human cannot save you a third time." Elias read it beside her. His jaw tightened. "They're getting bolder." Serenia folded the message carefully, her voice calm but her eyes cold. "Then we must be bolder as well. If they hide in shadows, we will bring them into the light." And so, a new plan began to form, one that would test their trust, their courage, and the fragile bond that was growing between them. The court was no longer just a hall of politics. It had become a battlefield of loyalty and betrayal, And in the heart of that battlefield stood a human soldier and an alien queen, two souls who, against all odds, were beginning to trust each other more than anyone else. The palace was tense in the days after the warning. The corridors, once filled with polite whispers, now echoed with suspicion. Every step Elias Ward took seemed to draw eyes, some filled with admiration, others with suspicion or even hostility. Queen Serenia had remained calm, but Elias could sense the strain beneath her regal composure. It was clear that the conspiracy within the court was growing bolder. Messages filled with threats arrived regularly, and allies were proving fewer than expected. Even loyal guards spoke in hushed tones, fearing the reach of the hidden traitors. And worst of all, rumors began to spread accusing Elias himself of orchestrating the attacks. The day of the trial arrived. Elias was escorted into the grand hall, larger than any he had ever seen. Crystal chandeliers shimmered overhead, casting patterns of light across the polished floor. Nobles and officials filled the seats, their expressions cold, their whispers heavy with accusation. Elias's heart beat steadily. He had faced enemies, on battlefields across the stars, but this felt different. Here the enemy was not armed with weapons alone. They were armed with lies and manipulation. And here his actions could be judged by those who would twist truth to serve their ambition. Queen Serenia entered last, her presence commanding the room to silence. She was calm, elegant, and impossibly strong. Yet Elias could see the faint worry in her eyes. She had placed her trust in him, and now she would stand witness while others challenged it. The chief accuser, a noble from the house of Vanar, rose. His robes were dark, adorned with symbols of his high rank. His voice was sharp. "This human, this outsider, has brought chaos into our court," he said. "Twice our queen has been attacked since his arrival. He claims to protect her, but how do we know he is not the cause? How do we know he does not act for his own gain?" Whispers of agreement spread across the hall. Many eyes turned to Elias, scrutinizing him with suspicion. Elias's gaze met Serenia's. She nodded slightly, a signal of confidence and trust. Drawing a steady breath, he stood tall. "I will speak honestly," Elias began. "I am no traitor. I am a soldier, trained to protect life. When the first arrow came, I acted because it was the right thing to do. Not for reward, not for honor, but because your life mattered. I have done nothing to harm this court or the queen. I acted out of loyalty and instinct." A murmur passed through the hall. Some of the nobles were unsettled, others skeptical. Elias continued, his voice firm. "Think carefully. If I wished harm, do you believe I would have risked my life, stepped in front of a poisoned arrow, and faced danger in your very court? Look at the truth. The real threat remains hidden, cloaked in shadow. The blame cast on me is easy, but it is false." Queen Serenia rose then, her voice clear, commanding, yet calm. "Captain Elias Ward speaks the truth. I have witnessed his courage, his loyalty, and his honor. He saved my life twice when many of my own people hesitated. To accuse him now is to betray the very values this court should uphold." Some nobles whispered angrily, others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The room was divided, fear, pride, and doubt battling with truth and courage. The council demanded proof. Evidence needed to be found, and the queen could not simply defend Elias on her word alone. It fell to him and Serenia to uncover the hidden conspirators. Elias had already begun piecing together clues during his watch in the palace. Fragments of arrows, broken locks, whispered conversations, and subtle signs of movement all painted a picture. With careful deduction, he traced the path of a second attack to a hidden corridor near the royal archives. When he and Serenia investigated, they found the conspirators' secret. A small group of nobles had created a hidden chamber where poisons were stored, arrows prepared, and messages written. The room was evidence enough: the poison, the engravings on the arrows, and documents describing the timing of attacks. Elias presented the findings to the council. "These are the ones who sought to harm the queen," he said. "The human you accused falsely is innocent. Look at the proof." The room erupted in murmurs. Some nobles were shocked, others embarrassed. The conspirators were quickly identified, their plots laid bare. Guards moved in swiftly to arrest them. Yet the danger was not over. As the conspirators were led away, they lashed out. One attempted to strike Elias with a hidden dagger. The Queen reacted instantly, stepping between Elias and the blade. "No," she commanded. Her voice echoed with authority, and guards subdued the conspirator before harm could come to either of them. Elias's heart pounded as he looked at the Queen. She had risked herself again for him, and for the first time, he felt the depth of responsibility for her safety. He would never let her face danger alone. Not now, not ever. After the court proceedings, Elias and Serenia walked through the palace gardens, the air calm now, the threat removed for the moment. The glowing flowers reflected softly in the nightlight, painting the path in shades of silver. "You were brave today," she said quietly. "Your words reached those who needed to hear them. And yet, I know you risked everything to speak." Elias shrugged lightly. "I spoke the truth. That's all I can do. I cannot allow lies to win, especially when lives are at stake." Serenia looked at him, her silver eyes reflecting the moonlight. "You are more than a soldier, Elias Ward. You are a light in the darkness, a reminder that courage can come from anywhere, even from an outsider." For a long moment they walked in silence. The court was safe for now. The conspirators were in custody, and the Queen's position was secure. But Elias knew that power always attracted envy, and shadows often lingered longer than light. Over the following week, Elias remained at Serenia's side, both as protector and companion. The court slowly adjusted to his presence. Some nobles softened their opinions, recognizing the truth of his loyalty. Others remained wary, their pride unable to accept that a human, an outsider, had proven more faithful than many born within the palace. The Queen, however, began to show him a side of herself few had ever seen. In quiet moments, she shared stories of her childhood, her hopes for the Aelvari people, and her fears for the future. Elias listened, offering counsel when asked, but mostly offering understanding. One evening, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the city, Elias spoke softly. "You've faced danger your entire life. I've seen it in your eyes. And yet you never falter. How do you do it?" Serenia smiled faintly, the first genuine smile Elias had seen. "I have no choice but to stand. My people depend on me, as does this court. But having someone beside me who chooses to stand with me, it makes the burden lighter." Elias's heart stirred. "Then you are not alone anymore." "No," she whispered, her voice gentle. "Not alone." Days later, the palace returned to a semblance of normalcy. Lessons had been learned, trust rebuilt, and courage recognized. Yet even in peace, Elias and Serenia knew that danger could return at any moment. The court was a place of politics and ambition, and someone always desired power beyond their station. But in each other, they found more than safety. They found respect, understanding, and a bond that neither political threat nor treachery could break. For the first time in her reign, Queen Serenia felt hope, not just for her rule, but for the future. And for the first time, Elias understood that his presence here was not only about protection or duty, it was about a connection that transcended borders, species, and expectation. They had faced the shadows together and emerged stronger. The trial of loyalty had ended, but the story of trust, courage, and the bond between a human and an alien queen was only beginning. The Aelvari Palace was unusually quiet that morning. Sunlight, or the soft glow of their twin moons, filtered through the crystal walls, painting the corridors with silver and gold. Captain Elias Ward stood by the balcony, looking out at the city below. Ships floated gracefully above the towers and the streets sparkled with early activity. Yet the calmness of the scene did little to soothe the tension in his chest. Though the conspirators had been captured, Elias knew that danger rarely disappeared completely. Shadows lingered, and there were always those who would seek power through treachery. He felt a presence beside him and turned to see Queen Serenia approaching. Her long silver hair shimmered in the light, and her expression was calm but thoughtful. For the first time in days, she seemed unburdened by immediate threat. but her eyes held a weight that made Elias step closer. "You seem restless," she said softly. "I am," Elias admitted. "Even after the trial, I know the palace holds more secrets. We've stopped the current threats, but who knows what waits next." Serenia studied him carefully. "And yet you remain by my side. You do not falter even when the future is uncertain." Elias shrugged lightly. "It's not about certainty. It's about doing what's right. I promised to protect you, and I intend to keep that promise." Her silver eyes softened. "You have kept it. More than that, you have shown my people that courage is not bound by blood or species. You have changed how they see us, and how I see the world." Elias felt a warmth in his chest. Her words carried a meaning deeper than duty or honor. For the first time, he realized the bond between them had grown beyond mere trust. It had become something personal, something rare. Later that day, the palace held a public assembly. News of the failed coup and the exposure of the conspirators had spread quickly. Citizens and nobles gathered in the great hall, eager to witness the queen address the events and restore confidence in her rule. Elias stood beside Serenia, not in a position of authority but as her loyal companion. The hall was filled with whispers and glances, some admiring, some wary. Yet all eyes were on the queen, whose calm presence commanded attention. "My people," Serenia began, her voice steady. "We have faced betrayal and danger within our own walls. But courage and loyalty have prevailed. Those who sought to harm this crown have been brought to justice. Let this be a lesson. Truth and honor will always rise above deceit." Applause echoed through the chamber, some hesitant, some full of admiration. Elias felt a sense of pride swell within him, not for himself, but for the queen, for her courage, and for the trust she had shown him. After the assembly, as the crowd dispersed, Serenia led Elias to the palace gardens. The twin moons reflected on the crystal flowers, creating an ethereal glow. The air was calm, carrying the faint scent of blossoms. "Elias," she began softly, "you have risked everything for me. Your loyalty, your courage. It is unlike anything I have seen. I cannot remain silent about my gratitude or my feelings." Elias felt his heart skip a beat. He had expected words of thanks, perhaps respect, but not this. "You have earned not only my trust but my admiration," she continued, stepping closer. "And more than that, you have earned my heart." Elias's breath caught. He struggled to find words, but before he could speak, she reached out and took his hand. "Elias Ward," she said, her voice steady, "I wish to unite our worlds and our lives. Will you marry me?" Time seemed to stand still. The air around them shimmered as if the world itself held its breath. Elias looked into her silver eyes, seeing sincerity, strength, and hope. He realized then that the bond between them had grown far beyond loyalty or duty. It was love, trust, and mutual respect intertwined. He nodded, his voice firm. "Yes, I will marry you." Serenia's smile was radiant, lighting up the night. Around them, the palace seemed to respond, the crystal flowers glowing brighter, the fountains sparkling in celebration, and even the distant city lights flickering as if acknowledging the union. In the weeks that followed, preparations for the union began. It was not a simple wedding, but a ceremony that would honor both human and Elvari traditions. Humans who had accompanied Elias arrived to witness the event, while loyal Elvari nobles and citizens joined to celebrate the alliance. Elias and Serenia worked together, planning each detail. Elias learned more about Elvari customs, their music, their food, and their rituals of bonding. Serenia, in turn, learned about human traditions, simple yet full of meaning. Together, they created a ceremony that blended both cultures, symbolizing unity not just between two individuals, but between two worlds. During this time, Elias continued to serve as Serenia's protector, though the danger had diminished. Occasionally, he would patrol the palace grounds, ensuring the remaining conspirators could not rise again. But his focus had shifted. He now thought of the future they would share, the trust and bond that had grown from moments of danger and courage. On the day of the ceremony, the palace was alive with celebration. Citizens and nobles alike gathered in the grand hall, decorated with crystals and lights. The scent of flowers filled the air, and music, both human and Elvari, blended in harmonious melody. Elias stood at the center, his armor polished, his expression calm but proud. He felt the weight of responsibility, but also a warmth he had never known. Today was not just a ceremony. It was a symbol of hope, of trust, and of the courage to unite across worlds. Serenia entered, her presence commanding yet gentle. She wore a gown that shimmered like silver light, her hair flowing like a cascade of stars. When their eyes met, Elias felt a connection stronger than any battlefield bond he had ever known. The ceremony was simple, yet profound. They exchanged vows, not just promises of love, but pledges to stand together through danger, through challenges, and through the unknown. Their hands joined, the symbols of their worlds blending in harmony. When Serenia placed a silver ring upon Elias's finger, he felt a surge of joy and determination. This was not merely a union of two beings, it was a promise to their people, a message that courage, loyalty, and trust could bridge even the greatest divides. After the ceremony, the celebrations continued. Music filled the air, laughter echoed through the palace, and citizens from both worlds shared in the joy. Humans and Elvari alike marveled at the unity, witnessing firsthand the power of courage, loyalty, and love. Later that night, Elias and Serenia walked together on a balcony overlooking the city. The twin moons reflected on the crystal towers, casting light upon the peaceful streets below. "You have changed my world," Serenia said softly, her voice filled with emotion, "not just for me but for my people. They see now that courage and loyalty come from the heart, not from bloodline or birthright. And you have changed mine." Elias replied, "You've shown me that leadership is not just about strength, but about trust, compassion, and courage in the face of fear." They stood together, hands intertwined, looking out at the city. The palace that had once been a place of danger and shadows now felt like home, a symbol of unity, hope, and new beginnings. For Elias Ward, the journey had begun with a single act of courage, shielding a queen from a poisoned arrow. That act had forged a bond, led to trust, and ultimately, to love. And for Queen Serenia, the young human had shown her a truth she had long forgotten, that bravery, loyalty, and the willingness to risk everything could unite even the most distant worlds. As the stars shone above, reflecting in the crystal towers of the palace, Elias and Serenia knew that together, they could face anything. Their story was no longer one of fear or suspicion. It was a story of courage, trust, and a love that bridged two worlds. The palace glowed with life. The city sparkled below, and for the first time in many moons, peace and hope filled every corner of the Elvari realm.